Hey, good morning. This is Tom from Marcus Evans. Thank you all for attending today's webinar, Solar Trackers versus Solar Ground Mount. Does one size fits all limit your production? Brought to you in partnership with Clenergy. Before we begin, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping items. As you can see at the bottom of your screen are multiple application widgets you can use. All the widgets are resizable and movable, so do feel free to move them around to get the most out of your desktop space. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can submit them through the Q&A widget. We will try and answer as many as possible during the webinar, but if a fuller answer is needed or we've run out of time, we'll make sure to follow up with you in a separate email after the webinar. Also, a copy of today's slide deck and any other additional resources are available in the resources list. We encourage you to download any resources or bookmark any links you may find useful. For the best viewing experience, we also recommend using a wired internet connection and closing any programs or browser sessions running in the background. And you can also find some additional answers to some common technical issues located in the help widget at the bottom of your screen. A reminder as well to look out for an email within 2 hours after the webinar is done with links to download the webinar slides and recording. So with all that being said, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the day, Samir Jacob from Clenergy. I hope you all enjoy. Over to you, Samir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for making the time for being here for this webinar. Again, my name is Samir Jacob. I look after the global marketing for Clenergy. Clenergy, as most of you might know, is a solar mounting and rooftop mounting manufacturer with business all across Asia Pacific. Thank you all for being here, and I'll go to the next slide. So welcome. Now, the question is, why are we doing this webinar? Honestly, Clenergy, we wanted to provide a platform where we could learn from each other, especially within the solar industry, sharing of all of experiences and knowledge for the further betterment of the industry as a whole. And we truly believe that collaboration amongst all the players is the way forward. So for the agenda for today, I'll introduce the panel, our panelists quickly, and then we'll go straight into the panel discussion. At the end, we'll then have a short Q&A session from some of the questions that were sent in prior to the start of today, as well as some of the questions that we'll receive within the Q&A chat window. Beautiful. So let's jump on in. So our apologies. Sorry. Yep. Our first presenter is Jithesh Dev. He's the head of renewable energy at GEC in Vietnam. He has worked across the globe in Europe, primarily in Asia Pacific, and now specifically in Vietnam. Strong knowledge within ground mount and tracker technologies. Was also a research scientist with the Solar Energy Research Institute of Singapore. He's received all his education degrees from India, and has a very global perspective on the mechanical side and also the project development side of renewables. Next, we have Vincent Chan, who's the head of our international sales at Clenergy. He looks after primarily our APAC region, and also has a background in solar trackers, ground mount, rooftop PV, all from a commercial EPC perspective. And lastly, we've got Warren Lee, who is the head of business development with Jinko Solar. He comes to the solar industry with a banking and finance degree, and with over 6 years of experience within the solar industry. And over 10 years of portfolio management and financial advisory. So I reckon we've got a great panel here today from a financial sense, from a commercial sense, from a mechanical and an engineering sense. So without further ado, let's jump into our webinar for today. But before we do that, I wanted to get a gauge of the audience and what your preferences are. So we'll do a poll at the start, and then we'll do another poll at the end with a similar kind of question. So if I can get you all to fill in the poll today, and the question is, what's your preference? Is it solar trackers or ground mount solar fixed tilts? And when I say trackers, I mean ground mount trackers with a dual or single axis, everything that comes under that definition. So if you could fill that in for us and give that a click, we'd really appreciate it. I'll give you, we've so far got only a fair few who have submitted that through. If all the attendees who are listening in, I encourage you, give that answer a quick click. It'll also give our panelists an idea which direction majority of the audience today are going towards. Hopefully, maybe during this discussion, we can change the perspective, or maybe reconfirm your perspective of your choice. So without further ado, I'll now go over to the poll, and so we can see what the results are. Cool. So at the moment right now, it's a clear winner with the solar trackers at 71%, and the fixed tilts at about 28% in terms of preference. Need a little bit of information for our panel there. We'll just go into our second poll that we wanted to have for today. Now, these are the range of topics that we're going to raise in our discussion today. And but what we wanted to find out from our audience is, what are the key factors that you look at personally when you're addressing a solar project? So this again will give our panelists an indication on some of the important factors that our audience is looking at. So I encourage you all, give those answers a click. You can click multiple answers if you wish, and that'll give our panelists an indication on what's the audience preferences. We'll give you a few seconds to click that in. So the choices you have there is engineering design, location, cost viability, operations and maintenance, the various module technologies, and then finally, energy storage. Alrighty, there we go. Okay. So far we've got, sorry, it just keeps clicking through. I'll click it now. So yeah, so the results so far, it looks fairly balanced, except for obviously one of the main reasons is cost viability. And I think this will resonate within our panelists and with everybody else probably in the audience. So it's interesting to see that, yes, cost viability, I think that was definitely a given. And almost everything else is fairly balanced. Maybe operations and maintenance could be the close second. Cool. So we'll jump straight into it, and we'll go for our first question. So first question, this is around engineering design. Give us, I'm putting it out to the panelists. Give us your steps in the project design phase. What are some of the limitation and hindrances that you face for both systems? And for this question, I'd like to start with you, Jithesh.
So basically, if you look at the design phase for a fixed and tilt tracker, so what I did here is a brief comparison in case of one of the module technologies, how we can compare the for single tilt and fixed tilt and the tracker. For an example, for a country like in Vietnam, if you're looking for a fixed tilt solution, fixed tilt system, for example, it's like 150 megawatt system with a fixed tilt, and the EPC cost will be close to 0.53 cents, and which will yield a specific, which will give you a specific yield close to 1,500 or 1,600, 1,700 kilowatt hour or kilowatt peak. But in case of a tracker system, you will see like the EPC cost will be close to 0.6 or 61 cents. And also yield gain will be like 2,200 or 2,300 range. So this example is based on the bifacial technology, what I'm looking at it. But if you look at the monopoke or any other heterojunction technologies or anything, you will see a similar gain like 20 to 25% coming from the tracker side when it compares with the fixed tilt. And another thing is like the margin gain, what you achieve in comparison with fixed tilt over a period of a year is basically in what peak it's close to 90 to 94%. So for the design, another advantage, another thing with this technologies are basically like the land area for a fixed tilt system. Basically, the area required is quite less compared to the tracker systems. And of course, the only cost which you will see an extra coming in case of fixed compared to the fixed is the tracker cost. So that will add on to the few cents price high in the EPC cost. So over a period of 20, if you look at the overall energy annual production, you will see a significant difference here. Yield-wise, I say that, okay, the specific yield gain will be like 20 to 25% in case of tracker system, but in case of annual energy production, you will see a decrement actually, because the annual production for it will be like 250,000 megawatt hours plus, and in case of the tilt, you will see like 230,000 megawatt hours. So that is the basic, but it depends upon the module technology what we are using, whether it's PERC, monopoke, or bifacial or heterojunction technology. But in the current market, if you look at it, most of the developers or investors, they are moving towards the monopoke technology instead of bifacial. And it depends upon the countries where we are using. It may be possible in Vietnam, Australia, or in Philippines, or in Thailand, where we can use this tracking system technology.
Interesting. Nice. Thank you for that, Jithesh. And Vincent, what do you think? Vincent, are you there? I might go to Warren while Vincent checks his mic. Warren, go ahead.
Okay, so the question is, what do you look for first in a design, right?
Correct. Yeah, from a design perspective, are there any specific limitations that you look at from the two different systems?
Okay, definitely from my experience and with my clients, the first thing that is always looked at is the land or the area that is being installed in. So with limitations in space, tracking is definitely a very attractive option. After that, of course, is cost viability. If the energy generation coming from tracking, given the space constraint, is worth it, definitely tracking is definitely a option. When the space is not limited, and frankly, the balance of systems in terms of panels is cheaper, then fixed tracking or fixed mounts are definitely the go-to for my clients. So I would say first thing you look at is your land constraint and your area. After that, you look at costs, which is what will be the first two steps in any solar design.
Beautiful. I mean, I think that answer resonates with most of the answers that were given in the poll previously as well. Vincent, are you there now? What are your thoughts on the engineering design phase?
Yeah, sorry, guys. Right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, for us coming from the tracker perspective, usually what we support the client will be on the technical aspects. So in terms of collecting the data like the site condition, the module layout, the module specs that the client is using. So for tracker-wise, we will be asking more questions like what is the tracking angle that they require, what are the string per row, whether they want to be self-powered or grid-powered. So all these will enable us to provide a proposal to them for comparison. So sometimes the client may not know whether to choose for a fixed tilt system or choose a tracker system. So by providing them the solution and the proposal, they can do their own financial modeling and see whether which system made the most commercial sense for them to implement. Yeah.
Is there any limitations you've seen within trackers versus fixed tilt in a general perspective?
Yeah, certainly. As Warren mentioned earlier, land will definitely be a main concern in terms of tracker. Typically, based on our experience, tracker will require around 20 to 25% more land as compared to a fixed tilt system. So if the customer would like to, for example, install like a 50 megawatt or 100 megawatt of tracker, then if the land doesn't allow, then probably for tracker, you may be looking at something lesser like 40 megawatt. Yeah, so that is a major constraint in terms of the availability of land.
Interesting. I mean, both those answers, actually all the answers, they kind of like lead us into our next question, and that's regarding location. And I'll stay with you, Vincent, for this question. So from your perspective, which countries within Asia Pacific do you believe are really favorable for solar trackers as an investment? And if you can talk about, like, I guess, the environmental conditions and commercial conditions, like the feed-in tariffs, etc. What's a good investment and why in the various countries across APAC in solar trackers?
Yeah, right now, I think in Asia Pacific, most trackers are installed in China, in India, in Australia, and possibly right now in Vietnam. So I talk about Southeast Asia in general. So Vietnam, because of the 2 rounds of feed-in tariff, basically it has been driving the utility scale market. So tracker has been widely installed in Vietnam. And this is also coupled by the higher solar irradiance in Southeast Asia. So beside these few countries, I foresee the growth to be follow on to other countries like in Malaysia, for example, Indonesia, etc. So all these countries, whether they are going to implement tracker or fixed tilt, really depend on a lot of factors that we mentioned earlier, like the commercial aspect and as well as the environmental aspect. So sometimes where location where you have high wind load, for example, in Philippines, then maybe tracker might not be the most suitable solution. So maybe you should go for a fixed tilt system. Whereas for country where you have lower wind load, places like Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, etc. Yeah, so tracker might be better solution. But this is also in consideration to the possible feed-in tariff or option prices from the government. So in general, I would say in Southeast Asia, typically we can achieve over 30%, 25 to 30% higher power generation using a single axis tracker coupled with a bifacial module as compared to a fixed tilt system. On top of that, right now, you can even achieve 5 to 7% higher power generation with smart AI tracking feature right now, which enable the tracker to move the modules to the best power generation angle. Yeah. So that being said, it doesn't mean that the tracker will be suitable for any ground mount system in Southeast Asia. So it also depends on a lot of factors like CAPEX cost, OPEX, the feed-in tariff, the site condition, or whether there's any curtailment issue. Yeah.
Interesting. You mentioned a little bit more in depth with a country like Vietnam. Jithesh, you're in Vietnam right now. From your perspective, location and the countries across APAC, what's favorable for solar trackers?
So basically, the thing is like in case of Vietnam, so we have the first FIT phase, phase 1 and phase 2. It's almost coming to an end. So the next thing will be basically under the DPPA agreement or auctions. So it depends upon the developers or investors whether they need to go with the fixed tilt or the. But as a developer, as GC is a developer, so we always look to see that what is the benefits we get from the trackers, and how much excess energy generation we can sell it to the utility. So as the design perspective and as the developer perspective in Vietnam, so most of the developers, they may be moving towards to the tracker systems in the coming projects, because in the first phase for the FIT1 and FIT2, we didn't see much system installed in Vietnam with the trackers. Only few systems are there. Most of them are fixed tilt.
And was there any specific reason why they went with fixed tilt there?
One thing is the lacking of awareness during the FIT1 and FIT2. Second thing is if you look at the zones, irradiation zones in Vietnam, so we have 3 to 4 zones. So mainly most of the investors or developers, they move to the high irradiation zone, and where they use the fixed tilt system. But in the other regions where they have a low irradiation zone, they can go with an option with the tracking system also. That nobody has thought of it. That can be a better solution and improve the energy generation.
That's a very good point. Warren, I'll come to you as well. I mean, we've spoken a fair about Vietnam. From your perspective, in the other countries in APAC, which other spots have been popular for trackers?
If you do your statistics and you take solar development across the Asia Pacific, and you do a study to see which countries and which projects choose trackers, I can tell you that you will find a correlation that will match between the maturity of the market to the adoption of the technology of tracking. Frankly, if a market in terms of solar generation is new, is in its infancy, technology will always be used towards what is common, what has already been matured, and what is known. For technology to be adopted that is modern or that is a little bit towards the newer side of things, it takes a mature market to adopt it. And to choose a tracker, there's so much more factors than just cost. You're looking at installation size, you're looking at what's the electricity rates that the country is utilizing, and the incentives and infrastructure the government provides, the land constraints that the area has, as well as the latitude and the weather of the country itself. There are a lot of constraints when it comes to what kind of trackers you choose. So definitely a more matured market would choose multi-tilt tracking systems. And in my experience, the countries, as said by Jithesh, is China, India, Australia. Southeast Asia is picking up. I definitely look at my clients in the region, and they do consider using tracking. It's always in play. It's always in the consideration. Whether they choose it or not is definitely an economic question, but it's always in play. It's starting to be picked up, I think.
Interesting. Thanks for that, Warren. Actually, I might just stay with you because my next topic I want to bring up is mostly around cost viability. So let's talk cents and watts. So can you give us some key metrics that help you in analyzing the cost viability for your next project?
Well, I am the module manufacturer, and of course, any customer that comes to me will always ask the question: is how much does the modules cost first? In any system cost, when you look at your computation, obviously the module cost is one of the highest, if not the highest component. If anyone in the industry who has been tracking cost in the last 3 months has definitely seen a rise in module cost. That is because of the raw materials. So glass, everything from glass to aluminum has seen prices being increased in the last quarter, and there is going to be a causation here. There's a correlation between solar pricing and the adoption of tracking. When solar modules is on a cheaper side, when it is on the economic viable side, you can choose to actually employ or deploy a wider amount or a bigger amount of modules, and therefore you will choose a fixed mount system for your design. Well, when module cost becomes higher and you want to limit the space and you want to have as much generation as possible, when you have that space limitation, then of course you look at having multi-tip tracking systems. So from a cost perspective, definitely module cost is one of the key components, but there's a correlation between how high the module cost is and the rest of the systems, if that makes sense to you.
No, it makes a lot of sense. I like when you look at the stats and you look at the correlations, it definitely makes a lot of sense. Vincent, can I come to you? So, from your perspective, what do you think is the ideal LCOE with regard to ground mount versus trackers?
I think it really depends on each countries, the government incentive, etc. So I would say based on the two technology comparing tracker and fixed tilt, you can see that basically tracker price, talking about the mounting part, can generally be double that of a fixed tilt. So in order to justify going for a tracker system, the developer, the investor, or the owner really have to work up the sums, in the financial modeling, etc., to justify, whether a tracker makes sense. But considering right now the technology advancement with the modules, with the tracker technology, it seems to be a lot of projects are moving in the right direction, going into tracker system. So, but nonetheless, I would say that the cost viability for a project really depends on the government support, the government incentive, moving forward, especially when trackers are mainly used for utility scale project right now. Yeah.
Okay, and Jithesh, what do you think in terms of from a financial sense, the key metrics? How do you analyze the viability for your future projects?
So basically, if you look at the fixed tilt and the tracker, of course we have an yield from the energy. But if you look at the EPC cost, we will see a 13% higher compared to the tilt one, fixed tilt. So that cost difference, we need to incorporate that into the LCOE. But this increment in the EPC cost, what we see can be compensated. Basically, it can be compensated from the over a period of 10 years. And from the energy generation, it will be compensated. So, and another thing, what we can see is that it depends upon the technology what we are going to use, module technology. It can be whether it's bifacial, or it depends upon the developer or to the EPC contractor what is the technology which we use it. So this we need to have a trade-off between the fixed tilt and the tracker systems. So it all depends upon how your capex, and if I capex cost actually. So based on the analysis, what I did is we will see the cost difference will be close to 15 to 20% higher when I use a tracker system. So that price range, yeah, we can recover that in our LCOE. But if you do the LCOE, you can see that over a period of time. So in case of Vietnam market, if you look at the developer or developers, mostly the developers or investors, they only look at the cost. They are not looking at the technology. So one thing is when we present before to them, it should be more onto a technological discussion, then understand the benefits and advantages of using these technologies, then comes to the cost. That should be the best, because in Vietnam and mostly other market, what is your cost? That's the thing. But if you go to any market, the cost is the primary thing. But this need to be changed. We need to have a technology-driven solutions, then go with the cost and see that what is the benefits coming out of it. That should be the method we need to adopt in all the markets.
Great words. I hope more investors on this call and future investors listening to this webinar are hearing this, and let the technology speak for itself. The next topic I wanted to dive into was operations and maintenance. And I can actually stay with you, Jithesh, on this question. From your perspective, when it comes to the lists of all your O&M costs, and we're looking at purely large-scale projects, what's the type of technologies or techniques that you preferred when doing your maintenance checks?
So usually, if you look at when you look at the asset management or operation maintenance of PV plants in any of the markets, if you look at it, it depends upon the scope of the O&M contractor. What is the scope matrix you're going to do? So you can categorize that into few different levels. Level of maintenance, like some customers, they engage like as a consultant, O&M consultant, and few of the developers, they just want the full package O&M, and some they want to do only the data analytics part, or and give them a suggestion how to improve the plant performance. And another part is like some of the developers, what they look at is like only the preventive maintenance and the corrective maintenance. So as a GEC is a developer in Vietnam. So what we have is like, we have our own in-house O&M. So what we did is like, after the EPC contract is, EPC contractor finished the project, we took over the operation and maintenance and run the complete cycle operation and maintenance activities. So if I look at the cost perspective of that, the advantage is like, if you set up a proper preventive maintenance plan and a corrective maintenance plan and the checklist required for each step of the maintenance process for different components, say modules or structure, for inverter, for string combiner box, all the critical components, if you have that in place, and your site team is doing the plant maintenance in a correct way, which can be tracked by a ERP software, simple software where you can track it, how the preventive maintenance are happening, you will see an increment, you will see a performance increment from the plant itself due to the preventive the maintenance activities, where you can improve the availability of the plant, say like greater than 99%. I can't say how much I'm getting it from the plants which GEC is managing, but you can see a very good increment of greater than 99% in the availability terms. And if you look at the energy generation over a period of year, so there may be certain contribution coming from the weather, but preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance, whatever the corrective actions we play, will have a greater role in the excess energy generation. That can cover actually the O&M cost and the overhead cost, what is coming from the for the plant. So, and if you look at the tilt, fixed tilt and with the tracker system, it depends upon the O&M companies or the developer, how you assign the O&M tasks. So then they need to do the cost estimation. On an average, for example, in Asia Pacific, if you look at different markets, the O&M price range is within 4,000 and 5,000 USD per megawatt. But we need to optimize that cost. So if you look at a fixed tilt system, the O&M cost, basically it's like in this close to $4,000 to $4,200 range. But if you incorporate a tracker system, maybe you need to add a few $100s for the maintenance for the motors, greasing and everything. So even if it is a fixed tilt system, you need to have a proper maintenance. Otherwise, you will see that basic checks like torque, then you need to check whether any corrosion on the structures or metal components, everything. So there is a maintenance required for even for the fixed tilt system, which many companies are not doing that. They don't look at the torque or anything. They just, after 2 years, oh, the plant is okay, it's running fine, no issues. But our case is not like that. We do individual every 6 months or over a period of year, we do the top check and everything. That's why if you see in some of the site, when there is a small typhoon or something, you can see that for a fixed tilt system, the module will be flipped or some incidents are happening. So in case of tracker system, for the operation maintenance perspective, I'm hearing in a lot of articles and that the modules fly and tracker system topple down and everything. So based on the PV simulation, we can adjust that when the rainy season is coming, or based on the weather data, we can estimate it. So based on that, we need to adjust the tracker system so that on a fixed tilt position, so there will not be any impact from the typhoon or any other natural calamities. So handling
very interesting. Yeah.
Handling operation.
I was just going to say that I was just going to say that very, very interesting, and it's so much you have to think from obviously the long-term perspective. A lot of projects just think it's set and forget, But I think from what you're saying is that this is almost you got to have a 10 or maybe 15-year O&M plan.
Yeah. So you can have a planning
Go ahead.
You can have an O&M planning for first 2 years based on your plant performance and based on your all the failures what you're happening. You can do a MTTF or MTBF analysis. Then you can improvise your preventive maintenance and corrective maintenance plan. Thereby, the plant maintenance can be improved over another next 5 years. So every 2 years or every 5 years, you need to do this evaluation and improve the preventive maintenance or corrective maintenance. And in addition to that, training of technicians and also the engineers, it's a key parameter. That is the 3 things we need to balance when you're running an operation and maintenance activities.
Yeah. Wow. I think Jithesh there has covered almost everything within this whole aspect of this topic. But Vincent, is there anything that you wanted to resonate or anything that resonated with you when it comes to O&M costs?
Yeah, for sure. For O&M wise, fixed tilt and tracker, definitely they have a significant difference, especially when tracker you have moving parts, motor, etc. So definitely lubrication of moving parts and testing of the different motor parts are required to make sure that everything is running perfectly fine. So we typically suggest to do this either every 6 months or every 1 year. So that will be to ensure the perfect performance of the system. But for fixed tilt system, likewise, many owners will just install and forget. But typically, we will also recommend that to check the top value, on the bolts and nuts. I think that is also critical because after some time, the system may undergo, certain weather condition, strong wind, etc. So it's always good to have that check during your O&M. Yeah.
Okay, and Warren, from a module side, I guess I don't know whether it's important, but the panels just sit there, and you leave it to the mounting gear to keep you there secure. But from your perspective and what you've seen in the various projects that your company has been involved in, is there any specific technology or techniques that you guys use for your maintenance checks? Warren, I think you're muted. If you can just check. I think you're muted there, Warren.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I was saying, from a module perspective, the entire thing is just to keep the face of the module clear and, that the sunlight can hit the module. But from different locations, I've seen really, insane issues. I've seen sand that's totally covered and dust that's totally covered when owners do not actually maintain the system. And I would recommend that, it's like an aircon, you service the aircon every quarter in Singapore, at least. I do that for my condo. And this is not much difference. So if you don't service your system every 3 months, you'll see a drop in the performance and you're losing energy, which equates to losing money. So yeah, so cleaning and maintaining the system is a must.
Great. And since I have you here, I mean, it only makes sense for me to go to the next topic with you. In terms of your ideal module technologies, there's so many variants out there today. I mean, monopoke, bifacial. What's the best when it comes to, or at least your recommendation when it comes to fixed tilts versus trackers?
Module technology has not shown leaps and bounds, but there has been a lot of incremental improvements and optimizations that have been done throughout the last few years. And one of the things that is key in the last year and the last couple of quarters is power density. How much power can be put into every square inch of a module? And the top few manufacturers have looked at the size of the wafers. And we have played with the sizing for so long. It went from 158 millimeters to 160 to 166. It shot up to 200. It went back down to 180. And now we seem to have found a stable sizing in 182. 182 millimeter square cells is optimized to the current manufacturing facility that we have. If you ever feel a silicon cell, if you ever have a chance to visit a solar manufacturer, and you get to look and touch the thing, it is really very, very brittle. So there is going to be a limit to what kind of sizing that it can be. So 182 is pretty much the optimized size in terms of how large the wafer can be, to how much power that we can produce, and what kind of power density that we can have. So at the moment, 182, at the moment, in Jinko Solar, our Tiger Pro, when we look at the 78 cell technology, we are looking at about 580 watt peak. And that is going to be the main module sizing and the main power class going into the second half of this year. So in terms of tracking, it looks about sizing, right? How big and how heavy a module is. The bigger the module, the harder for the tracking system to actually maintain the weight and tilt the modules correctly. So we have to look at what kind of optimization we can have when it comes to modules plus tracking, in terms of size, in terms of weight, in terms of ease of installation. So current module sizings that are popular is definitely the half cell. We are looking at anywhere between just a very general 2 meters by 1 meter, and that is going to be the main product moving on. And we are looking at about 580 watt peak should also be the main power class that you can depend on for the coming second half of this year.
Interesting. Vincent, from your side, looking at projects across Asia, Asia Pacific, but what are some of the technologies that you've come across that's been popular?
So coming from a tracker perspective, in my opinion, I think the bifacial will be the module of choice moving forward. From some data that is collected from various sources, bifacial module and single-axis tracker combined can actually achieve the lowest cost of electricity in 93% of countries in the world. So this is expected, to be the mainstream of the combination in future power plant. So, but as Warren mentioned, modules are getting bigger and heavier. So definitely in terms of our design, our tracker design, we are certainly improvising, to cater to the larger panel, stronger panel. And we are also having the respective tests like the wind tunnel test, etc., with these new modules. Yeah, so I think this is very critical to ensure that, we are catering to the technology advancement.
Did you say bifacial or single axis? Bifacial with single axis, right? That's what you just said.
Yes, Warren. Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit on why bifacial and single axis why do you consider it the most cost effective?
In terms of the power generation, it is actually from data collected, it's actually able to increase like something in the range of 30% from certain locations. So that in fact is one of the highest power generation with this combination. So that is from some data that we collected.
I don't actually understand why single axis.
Oh, in terms of the cost efficiency, so if you compare to dual axis, for example, the cost will be much higher compared to the single axis. So in terms of the LCOE, etc., so definitely single axis tracker with a bifacial module that give you the better yield in that sense.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Warren. Sure.
Interesting. And Jithesh, from your side, which is like, I guess, more on the ground and, real time, what's happening there in the field. What is your perspective when it comes to module technologies?
So if you look at the module technologies as Warren and Vincent mentioned right now, basically, of course, bifacial will play a key role for the single axis tracker, where you will see like close to 25% yield increment. And but monoperk or multi-perk or mono like multi, there are different types of module technologies coming up in the market. So the perk technologies which each module manufacturing company use, it's a different method of perk technology. So when we look at PERC, they say passivated emitter rear contact, that's it. But we don't know what changes they are making it. They may be making at the during the process levels, maybe at the metallization or on the anti-reflection coating side. These layers will improve the current and voltage inside the solar cells or the modules when you operate it. Of course, recently we are seeing the wafer sizing is going up. So improving the wafer area, this can improve the current density. So the ISC will improve. So we can see the ISC will be improving in most of the cases, and there will be a decrement in open circuit voltage. So as per the technology perspective, it depends upon the market, in the market. So market regions which we look at it. For Vietnam, we are still, most of the plants which I have seen it in Vietnam, most of them, they are using aluminum BSF or PERC technology. I didn't see any project with bifacial. So in future, there may be a chance that with the new DPPA program or with the auction, we may see a bifacial technology is coming into the Vietnam market. But based on the market survey, if you look at, everybody favors, most of the developers or investors, they favors monoperk technology. So, and another key thing is like, there are some companies, module manufacturers from China or in Asia Pacific region, they are working on heterojunction technologies. So that also, heterojunction also will have a market share. Majority share may be accumulated by monoperk, but it may be seconded by bifacial. Then we have the heterojunction. The heterojunction itself has many classifications coming in. So these three will play a key role, technologies coming years in different markets.
Thanks for that cross-section analysis. Me personally, I was just at a tracker site the other day in country Australia, and what they were telling me that was, even with foggy days, it's actually very good to have, especially when you have bifacial, because apparently the irradiance and the sun's rays gets bounced around by the fog, and you can the bifacial panels are able to catch on both sides, and so fog is actually
the diffuse reflection. The diffuse sunlight is always good for instead of the direct sunlight. The diffuse sunlight will give a better plant performance. It's better to have a diffuse light.
Wow, so it's very, very interesting. So yeah, that's very, very interesting. So you had folks. I mean, there's the popular ones. There's from a technology perspective, there's certain popular ones. From a LOC perspective, there's also popular. So yeah, it's gonna be a hard decision for most people out there. Keeping in the topic of new technologies, and I'll stay with Jithesh for this opening question. So. I know, Jithesh, when we spoke earlier, you mentioned energy storage and how that plays with fixed tilt and tracker systems. Can you give us your perspective on energy storage and how it plays within this market?
Energy storage, it's the new trend coming up with the market. Especially, it's already a more favorable, more familiar in Australia. So most of the projects which you see in Australia, it's coming with energy storage options. But if I look at the other markets, say Thailand or Philippines or even in Vietnam, we don't see any energy storage. So based on as per Vietnam market perspective, so based on the current situations in the Vietnam, we have a lot of transmission line, congestion issues and other impact coming from hydropower projects, and also the high capacity of rooftop systems. So energy storage will be the next option in the Vietnam, next key thing in the Vietnam market. So if, for example, if a plant get energy reduction from the utility, so if we have a energy storage system, then we can about these during the off-peak hours. So most of the plants in Vietnam has curtailment happening in the peak hours. So if the storage technology, we use it in most of the plant, utility scale plant, and then we will see that we can de-energize or discharge the battery off peak hours. But based on the FIT, feed-in tariff rate, what we have it in Vietnam right now, whether we will get that FIT rate for the energy storage systems or not, that is a question mark. And if you look at the cost perspective, the current FIT rate is like 9.1 cents. But if you look at the storage price currently available in the market, it's close to 20 to 21 cents. It's almost like 3 times of the cost. So the cost viability will be a critical thing when it comes to the energy storage, especially for the Vietnam market. And there is no a fixed energy selling rate for the storage business. So if we can use the FIT1 rate, yes, it's fine. But on the other perspective, it's not. But if you have technologies like fixed tilt and tracker systems, and we have a feed-in tariff for or any pricing, energy pricing for energy storage, this will be like a key thing for the Vietnam market, because most of the cement industries or sugar, oil and gas, other industries, they may need surplus power during the off-peak hours also. So energy storage can be an advantage and will be the key thing coming in the next 5 years. So, and what technology we need to drive? There are different types of energy storage available in the market. Lithium fluoride, then flow battery, then we can use, there are some hydrogen fuel cells. So what technology need to be adopted? That is depends upon the investors and developers.
Yep. And I think this is such an interesting little field, because obviously it's all very new to all markets. And I think this goes to even to what Warren was saying earlier, that is maturity of markets equals to adoption of new technologies, right? So if I can go to you, Warren, on this topic of energy storage, what do you think? Oh, you're still on mute, Warren.
Sneak preview.
Now you're okay.
Sneak preview. I haven't launched it yet, but I will be launching it soon. Jinko is going to have our own ESS, so that's going to be in our product lineup. When I talk about Vietnam, one of the key things that ESS will support, heading on from what Jithesh said, is that it can also aid in energy arbitrage, where you can actually hold your electricity and sell it at a higher rate depending on the FIT, on whether it's off-peak and peak. And it also will be a great aid in helping Vietnam stabilize its grid, given there has been a lot of grid connection issues in the last year. And there are plenty of projects that are not selling at capacity. They're actually losing half of the generation without ESS. So I think ESS coming into Vietnam would actually support the market a lot. It really depends on whether the consumers there have the nuance and whether they are technologically advanced enough to actually adopt the technology. But that's aside the point. But I would think that ESS will be a great support in in helping stabilize that grid in that country. But ESS, I believe, without a doubt, is going to be the next big thing. It's going to be the next thing in solar. There's going to be a next thing in renewable energy, and there will be a high adoption of it in the coming years to come, in the years to come.
Cool. You heard it first from Warren here on the Clenergy platform. Vincent, to you, what's with energy storage and your perspective, and across the APAC region specifically, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, for energy storage is certainly the next trend as we see as well. So in countries, for example, in Korea, ESS is pretty much very common for them. So it's already implemented in different kind of system. We have like carport with ESS, we have got residential system with ESS, etc. So it's very, very common, regardless of the size of the ESS system. So we know a lot of major players in the ESS market in Korea as well. So, but all this is driven by government incentive, especially in Korea. So for ESS, basically their feed-in tariff is much higher than the normal rooftop or ground mount system. So for Southeast Asia perspective, I think the adoption rate is still very low. I believe in future, with the cost coming down significantly, I think the adoption rate will definitely increase. And we certainly look forward to seeing more hybrid system, for example. It's not only going to be solar with energy storage, it could be solar with hydro, with energy storage, etc., with solar, wind, energy storage as well. So I think there's a lot of possibility with energy storage, and I believe, this is the next trend that we are looking forward to.
Cool. And keeping on this topic of new technologies, recently, obviously, we're looking at trackers, but for roof mount trackers. Is there any perspective on this that you can share with us there, Vincent?
Yeah, I think in the C&I market, trackers or rooftop trackers is something that is very new. But it has been mentioned before. There's some customer that was asking Clenergy whether we have such solution. It's certainly interesting in the C&I market, to implement a tracker or off-grid system with storage, or just a rooftop tracker system. Because if we are able to implement a rooftop tracker with storage, basically the owner is able to store unused energy generated, and then they can probably use it at a later hour during the peak hour, by shifting the pricing, right? So, and also when the system is not generating the power, they can still get the electricity from our energy storage. So definitely is something that is very interesting. I believe maybe as the cost of storage comes down, we're probably going to see more adoption of such solution.
And Warren, have you come across rooftop trackers previously?
I honestly have not. It's not yet common in my experience, except in Australia. So I have seen Australia, not personally, but I have seen Australia adopting the technology on a rooftop project, but not in Southeast Asia, I'm sad to say.
And Jithesh, what about you with rooftop trackers?
In Vietnam, no, there is no tracker system with rooftop or something like that. But I have seen a test bed in one of the recent conference, which I attended last time, in one of the region here in Mekong. So they were using for agrivoltaics. We call it as agrivoltaics or mini solar farm. They were using tracker system, single axis tracker. I don't know which company or anything. They were using for a small system, close to 500 kilowatt peak system. They were using a rooftop with tracker. So that was like a test bed to see how the farmers can get advantage of using solar with tracker and also with the battery systems. It's like a small pilot project funded by USAID or something like that. So that's the only thing which I have seen that in Vietnam. But it's tracker with a rooftop, it's like it depends upon how we do the structural calculations, because whether the roof can take it, the structural load, that is a question mark. So if it is like a trellis structure or something, yes, it can do that. But if it is on a normal roof, flat roof, it will be difficult to have a tracker system onto the roof, because we need to know the complete wind load, and building load, and structural load. The load, it should be viable to put that onto the roof. But if it is a concrete roof with a trellis structure, yes, it's possible to have a tracker. Then you can incorporate storage, all these technologies over there.
Okay, interesting. And so just to, I guess, get some clarity on that last thing you mentioned about the agrivoltaics, what you're saying is basically it's a system that's up on stilts, almost like metal stilts, and then you've got the track. And so typically, how high is that from the ground?
I haven't seen the system directly, but it's a bit on the higher side, actually, more than close. When I look at the image, it looks like more than 1.5 meters or something like that, more than that.
Okay, so thereby the farmer can actually still grow his produce underneath.
Yeah, they were doing some vegetables, all these things based on.
Okay, interesting. Well, everyone, that's the questions we have for this webinar. We have actually got a significant amount of questions that's coming through the Q&A section. I also just want to also address that we have hit the 1 hour mark. So what I might do is just, as Tom mentioned earlier, that we will answer majority of the questions offline and directly to you through discussion with the panelists here. But for right now, I might just pick 1 or 2 questions straight away. So there was a question here about trackers and doing a development close to the equator. Is that something that's viable? Maybe Jithesh, if you wanted to take that question.
I can pass it to Vincent.
Okay, Vincent. So basically, are trackers viable in countries closer to the equator?
I think with countries closer to the equator, the sun hour as well as the solar irradiance will be higher, will be longer. So I think definitely it will aid in the power generation with a tracker system. So probably you'll get a higher power generation in that sense for countries around the equator. Like for Southeast Asia countries, we do get we did simulation data, for countries like, for example, in Vietnam, in Thailand. Yeah, it's indeed we do get higher power generation over here.
Okay, and there's another. Thanks for that. There's a question here about a land area. If there's like a rule of thumb for land area that one needs, if you're looking at, for example, a megawatt, the question is that a ballpark how many acres or how many meters squared one would require if it's a fixed tilt or tracker? Maybe Jithesh, this answers questions there for you.
So it's for a fixed tilt system, it's close to 0.72 hectare per megawatt. And for a tracker system, it's close to 0.96 hectare per megawatt. That is the thumb rule. Okay,
interesting. I might just take the one last question there, which is if maybe Vincent, if you can share with us more about these smart AI tracking feature. What is the science behind that?
I think basically for the smart AI feature, that we have 2 options for Clenergy. So I will mention one of the options, which is we can use the inverter option, whereby the inverter will be sending signal to our control unit, whereby we know at which angle where the module is facing is generating the highest power. For example, during the cloudy days, etc. So we are able to have individual row pointing at different angle to generate the higher possible power. So that is, in principle, the simple logic behind the smart AI tracking.
Okay, interesting. So Yeah, I think that's all we have time for when it comes to this specific webinar. We have gone over time, so we will endeavor to answer all the rest of the questions and the questions that were sent in earlier. If I can indulge our audience one more time with the poll, please do go ahead and click your preference. Maybe we've changed some minds. Maybe we have reconfirmed what you previously already thought. So the question here is solar trackers or fixed tilt ground mount? What is your preference? We've got just a few people who have filled that in. If you can fill that in as soon as you can. Just make the one choice, either solar tracker or fixed tilt for solar ground mount. Thank you for everyone who is putting in your answers. I'll still give it another 5 more seconds before I go to the next slide, and we can see the results. And so to give panelists a bit of a perspective, beautiful. Okay, so it actually looks that there are more people now influenced, or I guess not influenced, but encouraged to go down the track for solar trackers. Interesting. And maybe a little bit less on fixed tilt ground mount. So in terms of awareness, this is what we have done with this webinar to bring more awareness towards trackers. So thank you all for tuning in today. I just want to quickly thank all of our panelists. And I want to give you the opportunity to give your, in a sentence, what's your advice to the audience in choosing the right solution for their... Jithesh, I'll start with you.
Use the technology, new technologies available in the market, and try to understand the technology and keep cost as a second option.
I like it. I like it very much. Very good. Thank you. Warren, with yourself, what's your sentence of advice to our audience for picking the right solution?
Well, my advice is to look forward, not always look at the present. Look at what is coming and have some anticipation of the technology and what is the best approach to mitigate any current problems with the solutions from the future. Because you're looking at a project, usually when it comes to installation, you're looking about 6 months down that road. So in 6 months, things change. So always look forward instead of just looking at the present.
I like it. Interesting. And lastly, but not the least, Vincent Chan, what's your perspective and what's your advice to our audience today on choosing the right system?
I think right now many solar farms in Southeast Asia or Asia Pacific in general are looking at the traditional fixed tilt system, but with tracker technology improving, leaps and bounds over the past few years, I think owners, investors should really take a look at the tracker system, not just looking at the initial capex cost, but overall, what is the power generation that you're going to achieve? What is the best way moving forward, to helping the environment, for example. Yeah. So I think, tracker will probably be the next trend moving forward. And of course, with energy storage cost reducing, I think probably we're going to see more and more, not just solar system, but maybe a hybrid system coming up. Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Vincent, and thank you very much to all our panelists here today. Thank you all for your time. A bit of something there for the audience. If you, Clenergy, this is our first webinar that we're putting out there for the Asia Pacific region. If you've got any feedback specifically for us, please do get in touch at communications@clenergy.com.au. This will definitely not be the last. We'll be definitely back again with bringing you some new topics on the renewable industry. Thank you very much for being here for this webinar. I'll now hand you over back to Tom from Marcus Evans. Thank you all.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Samir, and thank you all for sharing these great insights and being so generous with your time today. I know we've addressed lots of questions, but any that we didn't get to, we'll make sure to get back to you via email after this. So a reminder also to look out for an email within the next 2 hours with links to download today's material. And we'd also really appreciate your feedback. So if you take a minute to answer our very brief survey that will pop up on your screen at the end of the session, we'd really appreciate it. On behalf of Clenergy and Marcus Evans webinars, just like to thank you all for joining us. We do hope that you'll be listening in at our next event. Take care and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.